Hello, and a very special On A Roll welcome to our guest this episode, Jacob Wolf Lefton. Thank you so much for joining us. The audience will know this because we would have cut live from the studio, but we're here to talk about roleplay, performativity in roleplay, mechanics and crunchiness, and how we get left brain, right brain, and all those lovely kind of parts working together for a beautiful, harmonized, full 360 experience at the table. But before we get into questions, chats, and the nerdy details, why don't you tell anyone who's not familiar with you a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your TTRPG background, and your performance background?
Whew. I'm Jacob Wolf Lefton. I am an actor. I'm a performer, and I do some amount of writing and filmmaking and stuff. I do a lot of different things, creative things with my life. And I'm from the United States, from the East Coast, and I live now in Berlin, Germany, which is kind of a place where I've been trying to carve out in the European scene. Where can I do actual play TTRPG? Because the US evening hours are a little bit inaccessible unless I want to have like a night job, which I have a kid, so it's not possible. And then my TTRPG background and performance background both kind of come from the same place, which is childhood. I've literally been playing TTRPG. It's one of the things I've been doing the longest in my life. My earliest memory is like 4 years old playing bunnies and burrows with stuffed animals as the minis at some science fiction convention. Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, Rune Quest, other games coming through in college, playing a lot, and then and then as an adult, just consistently. And then I moved to Germany and left it all behind for like 2 years. I had a D20 shaped hole in my heart when I didn't have a role-playing game for like the first time in my life. And then I got into AP. I started watching it around like before the pandemic started, but then I got into the performing stuff during the pandemic, which I think is the sort of normal story. But for me, the performance aspect of it is a natural extension of my interest in performing in general, because when I really leaned into studying acting and becoming an actor, I realized that the root of it was my imagination and play as a child. And that the role-playing drove my love for acting, and vice versa. My love for acting drove my love for role-playing. It's this idea of like being in the character. And so I, as a youth, I was in theater groups, and I did backstage, I did on stage, I did like theater camp, but it was like role-playing theater camp called it's now Wayfinder. It's sort of like people know of this.
Oh, yeah.
And I was there right before it turned into Wayfinder. And so that was pretty impactful as a teenager, transformative, like study improv during the day and run around in the woods with elf ears and foam swords and werewolves at night. Super great. And now in Berlin, I also practice and perform long-form improv, which I find is a great tool for how to hold these longer improvisational stories. And I've also dabbled in game design, so I'm sort of like all around this field in a way.
With all of that combined with you, it really comes across when you're playing. And I've since seeing you on streams dipped into Telltale Deer, and it's true there too when you're GMing, that it's an effortless kind of grasping of what I like to call like truths of the moment, which is probably a real term, but you're not struggling in those times when the spotlight or the proverbial scene turns to you to be like, well, what would be true? And that aspect of it is a result of the investment when it comes to an AP, where it's not you'll never believe I got this like flaming sword of kick-assness and I got to take the final blow on the dragon who was this ancient thing. It's not that moment that sucks me in, that has that soul pull for me. It's everything that led up to there. I know that you didn't start with that kick-ass sword. I know that the dragon has like wiped out your town. I know that this moment, this like very satisfying, emotionally charged, and narratively important moment is what makes it so incredible, and makes it, because you're kind of there at the table alongside with them. You're an active observer, and I think separates it out from, you know, forum stories where it's like, this incredible thing happened at our table, which is incredible for all of you. Just doesn't translate as well without having the years of friendship and context that you couldn't possibly give me in an anecdote or a thread.
Yeah, this is something that I have kind of like created for myself as a piece of theory of what I like, what I'm looking for in an actual play when I go to watch or listen to one, and also what I want to highlight when I'm making them as well. One of the things. And I believe it is something that people who theorize, like academics who actually write theory of this stuff, talk about as well, which is that the people at the table are a first audience to what's being created, in addition to playing the character. And there's an element of like being able to watch their enjoyment and their emotional up and down and feeling like you're in with them. There's this weird like sub discourse around parasociality in role-playing games, in actual play, where people are like, we need to get rid of it. But I think the more I think about it, like there's some aspect of the parasociality that is required in a way to create that sense of, I'm at a gaming table with friends and I'm watching this and I get their emotional impacts and I can have that journey with them. Anyway, that's like getting into theory stuff, and maybe people will want to fight me on it, but I'm happy for that discussion.
When I first started Homebrew, we kind of had two rules. Rule 0 is we're here to have fun. Rule 1 is we're not alone. There's an audience listening, watching. People are given up precious time. They could be doing anything else. They could be watching The Wire. Apparently it's amazing. Like they could be watching anything, and yet they're spending time with you, and that's precious and should be respected. And that's the thing I had from theater anyway. It's like people have spent money, they've spent time, they've spent something, a resource that they have, and they've spent it with you. Yeah.
I'm looking for a thing on my desktop because I agree with that, and it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. But also, I have this Miyazaki quote where he's like, it's from the internet. Who knows if it's real? But apparently, like a Pixar person asked Miyazaki, like, when you make changes, when do you make changes for you, and when do you make changes for the audience? And Miyazaki was like, I never think about the audience. And so there's like also a question around art and artistic process. And for me, like goes into my acting work, which is, these are tangentially related to the questions, but it goes into my acting position, which is like, there has to be an internal beauty to me as the first audience and as the first director of whatever comes out. It has to be, for me, it has to be a piece of art. And so for me, it has to have a beauty to it before even it gets to anybody else.
So with that in mind, I was wondering if I could ask my first question. And since you've been talking, I've already mentally added more to the list I sent you. Very nerdy and fun. But my first one is, how do you prep a character? And if you wanted to use Kevin from the mail room as an example, feel free to, but you don't have to.
Yeah, let me talk about Kevin specifically because he's like what brought us here in the first place. All of my characters, whenever I make a character, for me personally, it has to be narratively grounded. I just am uninterested if it's not narratively grounded. And that's a personal position. And it also impacts my, like when I DM something, or when I join a game, I'm desperate to know about the world and about the other characters or things that other people are thinking so that I can find how do I fit in and what are my relationships to this so that it's relevant to me and I have things to like build on and play with. Otherwise, like the worst sort of position to be in is to be handed a character who's a blank slate, who's like, yeah, I have no past, or I don't remember it, or I've run away from everything and I don't want to engage with it. And I just want to go forward and sort of be like, okay, well, we have to unpack that because all of what you're going to do next is determined by what you do before. And And so this is deeply important, and I think it's one of the things that drove Kevin, because we have this tournament, right? And this is just on the outset, it's at this crunchy, like, hey, we're in competition. I don't do competition well, because if I like really allow myself to be competitive, I'm gonna be really, really competitive. But then I turn into like an asshole, and I don't want to be that. And I'm not really a competitive person. I want to have fun. There's like, have fun, win, have fun,
Yes.
win, you know, right?
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, well, I have to give it like a good shot, you know, and D&D is a bit technical. I find that as a system, you can, once you get into those higher levels, like we were level 10, so you can start to get a little bit, you can play with it. I have a background we played Shadowrun for many years at home, and I would spend 6 hours making a character, just like point buying every single little thing, and our group was so tuned into how the game worked that like if you didn't show up at the table with a character who was rolling dice pools of over 10, 13, 15 in each of their like primary skills, you just weren't going to be able to operate at the level of the party. And so you had to show up with these fine-tuned characters, which meant that like my wild ideas of like trying to make, I had an idea for a character that was like a combat lawyer, where in a gunfight they'd be like, hey, is your team following this code? Our lawyers are going to be in touch, and then like get them to stop shooting at you. Our DM didn't get it, and the character didn't work because the system was like, you can't have an intellectual and a physical combat person. They don't. So with this tournament, I was just kind of like looking at it like, okay, how do you want me to play? It wasn't really super defined. I asked, and Declan said, hey, it's basically we want to show the audience a good time. And I was sitting there thinking like, okay, cool, because the way to win is like greater invisibility and flight, and then whoever I'm against is fucked. And that was the strategy of the winning person, basically. I looked at that and I was like, okay, cool, I could do that, but that's not interesting or fun to me to play. I feel personally not like it doesn't connect to anything. And I think that Grabo character had something that was connecting to that player, and there was like a clear role playing going on, and so it was like fascinating to watch. But for me, I was like, what do I do? What's fun? Well, fun is the back and forth of dice rolling. So what mechanics exist to make people re-roll dice? And so I just did like a deep dive. I searched online, and then I went through all of like the skills and spells and whatever of like, what can I have in terms of class abilities and luck and like background abilities and lineage or race or species or whatever you're calling them, so that I have as many options as possible to make people, myself included, re-roll or add or subtract numbers to the dice. Because that could, even if I won't win, if I'm like this like wimpy little sorcerer, it'll at least be fun to fuck with people and fun for the audience to watch. And then I was like, okay, cool, this is a bit hapless. Like, this poor sorcerer is obviously not supposed to be here. So I don't know why I just was like, I'm going to riff on the structure of this. And I think this is where the inspiration comes in of like, okay, this person is like an intern or whatever, and they're stuck here, and they're just like a chaotic loose cannon who's not supposed to be, like, they're the gremlin, you know? And so they're either from IT or from wherever. And I was like, mailroom. It's Kevin from the mailroom. They're 10th level, but it's all, what was it? I said they've only worked at entry level positions. So it's like they're level 10, but it's all entry level 10, you know? And so that's sort of how it came together. And then I sat down and I did the real crunchy work, which I kind of love, of like getting in and building the character and like being like, okay, if I do this combination of you know, feats and skills and this level build, then I can I can add 2 levels of wizard here and get this extra ability, and I don't lose too much over here, and all of this stuff. And that I think that comes from my like RuneQuest and Shadowrun and other crunchy character building, and also just long time as a kid of like in between games of just building characters. I think someone wrote some piece of like thought online once where they were like, oh, building characters is like solo play. And so if we count that in, then I've done a ton of it. I've done so many character builders and whatever. So it just was like, great, I get to sink into this. I get to have fun with character building. And with each of them, I get to kind of like justify it of like, okay, it's Kevin from the mailroom. He's kind of chaotic. He has no idea what's going on. So chaos, wild magic it all makes sense.
Not only was it a very well put together character, but it was flavored in really nice ways. So like Tasha's caustic brew, caustic potions were coffees from the, as in that style of the internet. It was these hot coffees that were spilling over the place. Mirror image wasn't just, that Dragon Ball Z like 3 people. It was looking busy. And I think those little touches are what allow you to take a little bit extra in a turn, because the thing that fills me with dread is when this happens during a game. Okay, I attack. Okay, I'll roll all my attacks at once and I'll just roll the damage just in case they hit. Okay, right. Plus 10 there. Did I use sharpshooter? Okay, that would be 15 and 27. And actually that's also 12 and 14. And the DMs they're going, damage to hit? What are these numbers? Whereas adding those little flavors, like I cast Mirror Image and Kevin begins to look busy as all these things are happening, means that as people are picturing that in their head, they go, oh, that's really nice. Gives you that little bit of mental space to go, roll, add, and then this will be this amount of damage. You do a wonderful verbal sleight of hand, which distracts the audience with flavor, giving yourself the time to do the crunch. And it's a skill I'm just going to mimic from now on. I'm going to go, how do I buy myself time to think? Flavor. And so with that sort of in mind, is there anything you consciously do? So these are things I'm trying to consciously bring to the table. Is there anything that you consciously do when playing to give yourself the space to both balance mechanics and roleplay? Or it's also fine to answer, no, Ben, I'm just naturally talented, which is fine.
Well, I have to say, like, I'm looking at my prep sheet for Kevin, and I also have like my actual physical record that I did, actually crossing out bubbles and stuff for the different spells and sorcery points, and even forgetting stuff, but also like just the moment of tactical play in theater of the mind, and being like, okay, I know that if I play this right, I can be out of reach of this particular warrior because I know how far they can move and what they need to dash and all of this. And then you're like, but I'm in theater of the mind. And if I play technically like that, it sucks for the other people because you can't see it. There's no reference. And so I'm just wheedling out like, oh, can I get 5 feet here or there? And it's up to a DM to be like, yes or no. And it's sort of less fair for the other player to be like, well, I'm just, come on. So I think there's that as well of like, you're making a calculation between what is all super tactical and what's like super the right move to make and what is like the move to make in this shared social experience that we're having. And that's one of the things that sort of like comes to my mind. And that's also why it's not like, okay, I have this spell that stuns you if you fail, so I'm just going to hammer on it. Like, okay, but it's sort of the same thing over and over. We don't get to see more of it. And that brings us to the flavor, which is I love it when you have the right justification to skin your character and your spells, because D&D is great. I know a lot of people get frustrated about D&D, and I think that's because of its position of power. But as a game, it's a solid game, and it has a good imagination around it and a good sort of generic fantasy that we have comfort with in general, those of us who are like used to it. But it also, we get stuck in it, and we get stuck in this sort of like, okay, this is the generic sort of, this is the general pattern. And so if we're able to kind of like break out of it and say, it's fine that we have this like Tasha's caustic brew, but Kevin is from the mailroom and doesn't know how to cast magic. And so what is caustic in Kevin's world? Oh, it's a cup of coffee. And so when he spills it on you and then runs away his 25 feet, he's not running away. He's saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can I find you a paper towel? Because he doesn't know that he's like caused you this damage in. So Kevin's reality is this is all an accident. Kevin's inner life is this is all an accident. And then if I can skin things for Kevin's perspective, then it brings, I think, an aspect of interest as the viewer to see the inner life of this person and how they have to adapt to challenges coming to them and changes around them. And so that's one of the things that I like about skinning things is it's not just for coolness in my mind, but it's as much to show like what is the inner quality of this person. I think that's how I go about it, is like really imagining what is the inner life of the character, what is the reality and texture of the world, and how does what they're doing, how do the mechanics reflect that and show that. I think that's, in my mind, like the point of mechanics is to simulate a world, a suggestion of this type of world. And so when we lean into mechanics, how do we show that? How do we show how does this magic or this swing of a sword or this particular skill, why is it so hard this way, or easy, or whatever it is, and how did the character come to that moment? The other great thing that flavor does between the player and the DM or the other players, but I find it especially great as a DM, is when my player gives me the flavor. As the DM, I can say, oh, this is how you imagine the world working? Fantastic. The more you give me of how you think the world works, the more I can incorporate that into my world building. And so then the world can work how you want it to, but I can use it to tell our collective story more deeply.
I might skip into it brings us a little bit close to a question I have, which is, do you have any favorite traits for DMs or players? And I think we've sort of danced around it. I think I could guess, but there's no harm in vocalizing it.
Yeah, I think that like one of my, I think I always come back to this, just this like base word of like kindness. And I don't know why I come to this, but I always feel like the worst thing is to be at a table where I feel like there's an animosity or conflict on the player level, and I'm really looking for just like the raw kindness to each other and acceptance. It's kind of like when we do our improv work here, we have these golden rules that we follow of we use listen, agree, and support. And so the listening is like taking in, agreeing is like the yes part, and the support is the and part, right? Agree with the world and then support the world building. And so the more that we can do that together, and I think it is really like empathizing with other people and being kind at the table, and seeing GMs who are like really celebrating their players is great. Even in high intensity moments, I'm currently working my way through the Critical Role Downfall, which is like level 20 Brennan Lee Mulligan with a bunch of level 20 gods, and he's thrown this impossible adventure, like challenge rating fight at them. And at the same time, he is as excited about their success as they are. Even though he's like, we got to make this interesting and hard, he's generous and kind and giving and excited about the work that they're doing together, and that's beautiful. I love to see that happening, and also for players together when they're fans of each other's characters and want to see moments of each other's characters working. And I'll throw it to the work we did with when I played Corinthian in what was it called? The
Close Encounters of the Prom kind?
Yeah,
Is that the
Close
name?
Encounters.
Yeah.
That's right. Close Encounters of the Prom kind. One of my tactics in that game was to try to have a scene with each of the other characters where we could have an emotional character moment, because the game had us in competition with each other. But I wanted to show we're all here together and we're all kind of like in this friend group who came, even if I'm the richest character and I'm kind of like potentially part of the backstory was that I've like invited them to my parents' vacation planet, and I imagine that he like is essentially paying to have friends or whatever. But I also thought, like, if we can tell an arc if Corinthian can have an arc with each character, it gives each of those characters an option, a moment where they can have like an emotional expression, and we can have some sort of story, even though it is this fast one shot with a very competitive approach of like one of us gets to be prom lord. And so I was really aiming for that in this way. This like, I want to hear from you and I want to have those moments with you. I'm excited about you.
Watching that stream, watching that game, and if you haven't seen it, it is the VODs should be up, I think. Please do go watch it. It just made me think of the best example of why we play these games. And for me, it's like, I can't watch movies these days without going, I think the writers play tabletop games. I think they workshopped this in a game. And the opposite for this, which is like, this feels like the best teenage comedy that we don't have in existence, because what better way to kind of poke fun at puberty and the kind of awkwardness of it all than bringing the outsiders being aliens who are going to, speaking of listen, accept, and support, they're going to see teenagers and go, right, that's okay. So all the things that we kind of feel embarrassed or ashamed about, these characters are accepting with open hearts and going, that's how we connect with these people. It's through these weird little things, which I loved. And to hark back to a previous point when we were talking about Brandon Lee Mulligan on Dimension 20 and on Critical Role, there's something I learned far too late as a GM, because I try to have very kind and wholesome and supportive games. And I'm saying this mostly to myself. It is kind to give your players consequences and have high stakes. Yes. It is kind because that's what they want. They don't want the soft Deus Ex, we've saved you at the end. If the dice are rolling badly and they've walked themselves into a situation, make their choices matter. That's an act of kindness you can show people at your table. And I am guilty of sometimes not doing that, where I'm going, that's okay, I'll save you, my little guy. Like, don't worry about it. Someone swoops in, don't worry about it. And I need to stop, because it then punctures the enjoyment of the game. It veers into the, well, why, of course this happens. It's a dream. It's fine. Like, this is all it makes it less real, I think.
I've done that. I've done it too. Yeah. And it's like, how do I make it stick better? Also on our stream, you mentioned the Telltale Deer stream. Hey, it's my first stream that I'm DMing. I DM at home as well. And I think, sometimes I'm in there and I'm like, are the consequences as strong as they could be? And I'm always checking that and being like, could it be more? And I think the answer is like, probably.
Yeah. It is hard to watch people you care about, but from a player sense and from a character sense, go through something tough. And I think it's part of the greatest challenge as a DM is not to, it's not all the prepping, it's not all planning, it's not all the kind of scheduling and the kind of these idiots don't appreciate my genius. It's not all of that. It's the, okay, do nothing. Do not step in. Only honor what has happened and the choices they've made. I think that's us.
To that
point, I'm landing the plane, but I want you to land with this point. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever played a game where the people at it weren't bringing some part of themselves to the character, even if they like. I know people who are like, I try to play completely off-type characters or little niche sort of like things, and when I think back on the pattern of it, I'm like, oh no. If it's off-type, it's sort of like that's your reflection in the mirror. It's so you, but just reversed or inverted or whatever. Like you can't escape it. Seeing it over and over as constant patterns, and then looking at my own characters and being like, shit, man, it's like no matter how hard we try, there's an element of us in there. But in my live shows, I've actually started narrating a threshold of like, and now we step through a gate, an archway with stones and the runes glow purple and a portal opens, and now you step with us into the world of, and then we enter into the improvisational world together.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. It's a really nice join hands, jump into this book. The world as you know it, and the realm as you know it, and physics as you know it. Like leave expectations at the door and join us on this, take the step that every theater goer or live show goer has to take, which is break the fourth wall. Like imagine, and it's the most captivating performances kind of do that. You get tunnel vision. It's like, and it's almost like when you're too deep in a book and someone pokes you on the shoulder, you're like, whoa, you just pulled me out of a different world. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a beautiful place to be in. So thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I messaged Jacob and was like, free for a 15-minute chat. I had a feeling we would talk and get on and have so much more than we've even covered, if you can believe it. It's one of those things. Next time I'm in Berlin, I'll just be like, hey, I'm nearby. Want to go get a coffee?
Yeah, please.
We can probably chat
please.
for hours.
Would love that.
But speaking of where people can find you, is there anything, upcoming live shows, social handles, anything you want to let the people know? We'll also have it in chat. We'll have it linked, so it's all there as well.
Yes, there's some things. Okay. All right, first of all, you can find me at Water Mosaic on all social platforms. That would be Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, Discord. It's just across the board. That's how I go by if I can get it. You can also search my name and I'll pop up. And if you're in Berlin, at the end of September, we have a live show in Berlin. And then the next week, in the first weekend, I think it's Sunday the 6th, probably, it's going to be another live show at the conclusion of Das Improv Festival, which is a big improv festival at the Comedy Cafe Berlin in Berlin. Both shows will be there. I'm working on a witchy podcast actual play right now with a couple of actors who are not actual players. They're actors, mostly with very little role-playing experience. It will be a serialized limited series using Wickedness, which is a game published by Possum Creek, where it's a coven of witches, and it will be a sound design, like immersive sound design, narrative actual play. And it will probably run for, 25 episodes or something like that. They'll be short. Each one is probably, hopefully 30 minutes, new format that we're trying out. This is the most I've shared outside of my close circle about it, but it's coming together, and I hope that we'll be releasing the first episode sometime, probably late autumn at this point, because we've had a couple of delays. But I think it's going to be really nice. So I've been talking about a secret project, and that's what I've been doing.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing, for a little bit of an exclusive, I suppose.
Yeah.
I cannot express how thankful I am for you to come on, to get to chat to you, to talk about some of my favorite things. Jacob, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you so much, too.